Hello everyone, hi. So welcome to Harnessing the Power of Community. Thank you all for coming along. It's actually quite nice to have a fairly full audience despite the fact that they wanted to take our chairs away to make up for the glut of people in the other room. But no, thank you very much for coming. Interestingly, this is my first ever talk in front of the games industry. In my current role, I get to talk a lot to brands and basically anyone that wants to sell products to gamers. That's who I talk to every day, and so this is like the first conversation I'll ever be able to have with the games industry. So it's very, very cool. So thank you for coming along, and hopefully it's not shit. So I'm always really skeptical when I come along to talks like this. I think I'm naturally arrogant and cocky, so I'm always like, who's this person to talk to me? I know everything. So I feel like I have to almost give you my CV now to say, this is why I'm credible and I can actually talk to you with a degree of authority about this stuff. So it is really important that you understand my background and who I am. My name is Tom Sweeney, and I am MediaChain's Director of Gaming, which I think is just the most bullshit but amazing title in the whole world. I used to work at Jagex for a fair few years, so they're the makers of RuneScape and Old School RuneScape, which is the world's most popular free-to-play online role-playing game. It's about 20 years old, so it's a bit mental, it's Java-based, a bit crazy, but it's unfathomably amazing because it has just launched on mobile, which is just this huge technical feat, and it's growing to this day, which I think is unbelievable. It's got a community of 250 million registered accounts. And when I was at Jagex, it was my responsibility to look after that community. So I started off as a player. I built out a fan site and made loads of friends around the internet, talking about RuneScape and generally being unpleasant to the company and telling them how they should fix their game and how it wasn't good enough. And they actually asked me to come into their office and speak to them a little bit about how they could message a potentially controversial update, which I kind of spoke through with a fair few other people in the community. They used my advice, and then a few weeks later I got a phone call and they asked me to join the company, which at that point I did. And I'd never worked in games before, and I didn't realize it was something that I wanted to do, so it was a kind of happy accident that I'm here in front of you today. So RuneScape was just this massive community, and now I like the idea of just running big communities. I think it's really cool. If RuneScape was a country, I think it's the 6th biggest in the world by population, which is crazy, so it can definitely beat Australia in a fight, which I think is cool. And I worked my way up from kind of like an entry-level community manager all the way up to running their community management as their head of about 3 years ago, and I left there last year to come work at MediaChain. And I learned so much there, and I built this passion for community, and I really share that with the rest of their business. And I think community can really make or break a game, and hopefully today I can share with you some insights about how I manage that community effectively and leverage that to improve discoverability and audience retention, and kind of give you some maybe thought starters on how you can apply that to yourself. So what am I doing now? Obviously you know I was at Jagex, but now I am at MediaChain, and as I said, I'm their Director of Gaming, which is just this bizarre job title that doesn't mean anything. But to basically describe it, it means that I look after the gaming brands within their overall massive media portfolio. So MediaChain is the most engaged social-first publisher and content creator anywhere in the world across loads of different platforms, and the ultimate aim of that company is to help brands connect with people. To help them connect with passion points. And one of those passion points, and in fact the biggest, is gaming, and that makes me very happy. And we have built a portfolio of gaming brands on passion. So we are now kind of working across 3 core brands: Gamebyte, Upcoming Games, and Frag Hero. And Gamebyte is probably the one that if you do know us, you've probably heard of Gamebyte. If you don't, then you definitely won't have heard of it. And it is one of the most viewed gaming media creators across all platforms in the world. And it's a very exciting time for us. We run these communities day in, day out, and there's a few people on our team in Manchester, just a few guys and girls who create content and engage with this audience every single day. And so I see us as a kind of like an influencer in our own right. We just have this massive audience, and instead of talking to them as an individual, we talk to them as a kind of content creator or brand. And I am so passionate about the power of communities and the power that they have, because the brands that we work with, we actually have the power to kind of sell their products or get installs on mobile games or whatever, you name it, we can probably do it. And we have brands across every different passion point, so it's incredible. But GameBite is really exciting because it's probably the biggest thing I've done in my career to date, which is taking it from this little like hobby brand run by 3 amazing guys in Manchester to now the most viewed gaming media creator anywhere in the world across every single platform combined. So I think the only kind of individual who's bigger than us is PewDiePie at the moment, so we're coming for him next, but he's only a couple of million views away from us, so we're definitely hot on his tails. But I always think, when I think of like media brands within the gaming space, I think of IGN and GameSpot, and so I'm delighted to say we absolutely smash them every single month, so go us. And I guess this is kind of just a vanity metric. Video views don't really matter, right? But I think in a world where video is king, we've taken the brand from something really small and turned it into something really big by focusing in on the audience's passion and kind of taking it from just being a way of communicating with a big audience and turning it into a community of people who share their own content. And so I like to say that we're the biggest deal you've never heard of. And yeah, as I say, we're coming for PewDiePie now. And so let's get into it then. In this talk, I would like to give you a very, very simple, what I think is a very simple formula to harness the power of community for your own games. And community isn't just something you can do really easily, and it's, I think, a way of thinking in a kind of cultural, it has to be a part of your organization's culture, and it has to be a big investment, regardless of the size of your studio or title, whether you're working from indie through to AAA. So I'm asking for a lot of you today. And at the end of this talk, I would like everyone to walk out of the room either thinking, yeah, we're actually doing a really good job right now, or there are things we can do better. And there aren't going to be necessarily individual features or tools that you can use, but there will be hopefully an idea of a kind of cohesive strategy in your mind. So because of that massive ask that I want you to go and change the culture and fabric of your companies and games, I'm going to sell community to you now because I think it is so important and I think it is the bedrock of every great title. Why should you give a shit? Engaged players, i.e. the ones that care about your game, are so valuable to you. You know this. They're very valuable in a literal sense and then in a more figurative sense that matters to people in this room. So engaged gamers in the UK, and we did that's upside down, but we did this big fuck off study, 127 pages of insights and data, and you can all have a copy if you'd like, about UK gamers and their spending habits, their tastes, how they communicate on social. And we found that gamers in the UK, engaged ones at least, are twice as likely to earn more than £35,000 a year, which is great news for anyone selling games, hardware, other products that wants to target a gamer. But it's this same group that also spends on average more than £51 each month on gaming, so whether that's actual outright purchases or DLC or microtransactions, whatever. But they're also more valuable to you guys too. So an engaged player can have a lifetime value up to 20 times higher than that of a non-engaged players. And that stems from 2 key factors. And the first is retention. Obviously a longer shelf life for your customer is a higher lifetime value, but also the likelihood of conversion. And hopefully I'll share with you some thoughts and ideas about how you can maximize both of those. So looking at some numbers then, VentureBeat published this fantastic study in partnership with Two Hat Security, and they looked at some top 10 mobile action games, and they found that adding any kind of chat feature could give you a 10% increase a 10 times increase in LTV. 10% would be pretty sad. And that is enormous. Keep in mind that this is purely public chats. They've gone from $57 to $563 with just by adding chat systems. And that is genuinely the only kind of feature that's been changed here. And if you can put people into a meaningful chat, so it's not just public and generic, this is chats that matter and they're with people they care about or have built a relationship with, you can turn that 10x into a 20x. And I think Steve Parkes puts it best, who's Zynga's old SVP for games. He says, if you can assist a gamer to make 2 new connections and engage in 1 good chat experience per day, the odds of them making a return visit increase exponentially. And it isn't just the chat that's the important thing here. Like, no one's saying that chat is the solution to all of your kind of retention problems, because it isn't. But what it is about is the connections that you can help foster amongst your community. RuneScape is often called like a glorified chat room, and that's because it is, and there's no surprise then that it has this enormous customer lifetime. It's the connection to other players that really matters, and that's what gets people to come back to your game time and time again. But also, your engaged players will advocate for you, and I'll explain why that is so important on the next slide. But what you have to remember is that 33% of gamers leave reviews on games they play, purchases they make, and they'll comment on their purchases, new games they're playing on social media. That's a third of your engaged customers spreading awareness of your product. That's free marketing. So go and encourage that, give them the tools they need, give them the assets that they want, get them to share the message. And I think it goes deeper than that too. If you can foster a rich enough connection with your fans, they'll do your work for you. And I look to Jagex for this again because I think this is a really fantastic example their player support team did. They were being inundated with support requests via Twitter, tickets, emails, and Twitter was just going absolutely through the roof with just very surface level support issues. And they had their support team dealing with various queries and trying to help players on Twitter, which isn't a particularly good medium. And so every time they were paying someone to come in and tweet, they were not paying someone to come in and answer tickets, which obviously meant a reduced customer satisfaction rating. So I think the obvious thing would just be turn off Twitter, get everyone to contact you by email. It'll be really simple. But actually they didn't do that because I think they really care. And they saw a huge appetite amongst the playing community, the really hardcore fans, to provide peer support and help each other. And this has been going on for 20 years. It's just Twitter was the new way of doing this. So they created a player helper system, which put verified social accounts in the hands of their most engaged and trusted players and allowed them to support other players. I've pulled out a screenshot of one of the players who they've helped, and I think there's about 30 of them. Now, this guy has helped more than 34,000 different customers. He's made 34,000 replies to tweets, which is unbelievable. So imagine paying someone to reply to 34,000 tweets with different support requests. They've saved money directly by empowering their community, and this person wants to do it, and they don't get paid. So I think that a player doesn't really do it for the money or for anything like that. They do it for the love of the game and the community, and there is no reason you can't start to leverage your super fans to kind of help you on that journey and help that mission as well. So yeah, if you can build trust and connection with your community, that will generate super fans, and those fans will in turn advocate for you. And you need those advocates because social proof is such an enormous part of the kind of purchase consideration process. 88.5% of players use social to find out about new games. I think that's fairly straightforward. And 75% of them use communities they're in and the friends they've made through games to educate on the types of games they should be playing, what the new big trends are. And it sounds really obvious, but if you can give your players what they want, they will share that with the world. And I think another RuneScape example here, which is, I think, one of the first great examples of games growing through like word of mouth, because I think 10, 15 years ago, the marketing was absolutely abysmal. I don't think I'd ever seen a RuneScape advert. They're much more sophisticated now. But that game grew literally because people were talking about it in the playground. And so games now, and what we do with GameBite, is we can help games kind of explode in popularity just through the share of voice that they have. If you can create a larger share of voice for your game disproportionately to your competitors, then you will kind of see the results from that. It's the same effect that Pokemon had in the playgrounds, and instead of playgrounds today, I guess it's happening on Twitter, Instagram, and on Discord, right? So you have to start to open yourselves up a little bit to the opportunities for spreading word of mouth through social and things like that. And there's a really good example that Media Chain ran a few years ago for a mobile game called Tippy Tap, and this was in the days when Twitter, you could make something go viral on Twitter with like enough followers, and that's what we did. We just told our followers not to download this game. We said it's addictive, dangerous, it's going to ruin your GCSE results, you'll hate it, please don't play this game. And it was an overnight sensation and went straight to the top of the App Store, as you might imagine. And it shows you the power of social proof, because as soon as you get people talking about it, and as soon as you get that disproportionate share of voice, you can propel yourself to genuinely huge heights. And you know what? You guys have such a position of power and you don't even realize it, because games are unbelievably powerful. You're creating worlds that fuel connections, that challenge friendships made in the real world. In that same research piece, we found that 25% of gamers preferred to spend time with friends they'd met through games over the ones they'd met in real life. There are so many friendships formed, so many stories of people meeting in games and going on to get married, having kids, you name it. I got my job because I played RuneScape. You guys have the ability to make life-changing decisions and life-changing worlds and life-changing games, and I think it's not until you start to realize the power that you have that you start to kind of tap into that to help enhance your games. You are creating the modern day after-school clubs, the modern day bars, the modern day chat rooms, and your games are giving rise to meaningful connections, so absolutely use that to the maximum potential. And when you can engage your players, you put the time into listening to them, they'll help you make better games. Lego do this so well, and I know they're not exactly a games company, but I know they're a brand we all hold in very high esteem. They know their customers so unbelievably well, and they've built a real connection with them. And now they're letting them help the company build the best possible products. Lego Ideas is their system for allowing Lego fans to create new ideas for sets and kits, and other users submit them and then subsequently vote on the products that they think they would want to buy and they think are the coolest. And enough votes and that product is commissioned and actually built. So I suppose the audience is directly helping print those little Lego bricks and selling sets. Now imagine if you could ask your most engaged fans, your best customers, what do you want? Get that idea validated by your own community so you know enough people want it, and then build a product that you know will sell. Lego are already doing that, and so should you. And it's really not about Lego Ideas or Jagex's community support helpers or the chat systems that VentureBeat were talking about. Ultimately, what this comes down to is the culture that those organizations and those development teams and those studios have built. So it's incredibly important that you guys start to take that away and use it in a cultural sense for your organization rather than just a feature sense. So yeah, build community through culture, not just features, and they are really important, believe me, but you already know that, and I don't want to lecture you on how to make a great chat system because you can already do it. So my message to you and the rest of this presentation will focus on how you can build a community through your organization's culture, not just the features that you add. And as I said earlier, I want you to come out of here congratulating yourselves on the fact that you're already doing a great job, or that you know where you can improve things from a cultural and kind of underlying standpoint, a more strategic view. So I want to share exactly my formula, how I would build this into an organization's culture. This is the same kind of strategy that I rolled out across Jagex. This is the same strategy that I've used to build the biggest, most viewed social brand for gaming in the world. And it will work for you as well. And I think it's so important that you really think really deeply in every decision you make about these 4 factors. And these are the 4 demands that your players have in order to build great communities. Drive, inform, care, and engage. And it's not necessarily in that order, but it makes the nicest word on the side, so it's dice now. So yeah, drive, inform, care, and engage. And I want to share with you now what each of these points means, give you some examples of how those can be applied, and then give you some ideas about how you can implement these as part of your culture. And as I say, I should have said at the start, but if you've got any questions, there will be a little bit of time at the end where I can answer some, but you can just come find me afterwards, and obviously I'll be in the bar as well. So let's kick off with drive then. It sounds so simple, but it's often one that developers and designers forget. But if you listen to your players and steer your development in that direction, you will start to see that quite obviously the players are getting what they want and they're more likely to retain. Your players won't always be right, but by listening, at least you know what they want from your game, and you can start to drive priorities rather than not necessarily just the projects you're working on. And my advice is to go whole hog into this and directly involve your players in every step of the journey. Some of the biggest success stories in terms of lifetime values come from the MMORPG space. And I think part of that is down to the genre, but I want to pull out these 2 key examples of it done in a masterful way. And they're EVE Online and old school RuneScape. And with all communities formed over periods of years, these have kind of taken shape and evolved rather than ones that have taken shape over a period of days, weeks, or months. And these guys are the ones that we should be holding up as shining examples. And even if you're making a hyper-casual game, I can guarantee you've got some people that play this religiously every single day, and even after you've long killed off your UA campaigns, there'll be people playing it, and they are your super fans. So get in touch with them, work with them, and kind of get in touch with them and work out how you can build those features they love so much into your next game. And I think these guys have retained customers so well because they have built the player directly into their development process. Their communities directly input, and in some cases actually control, the development roadmap or governance of the game. In old school RuneScape, at least 75% of the community have to support a change to the game before it's even developed, let alone implemented. So to put that into perspective, you've got these millions of players casting votes every single week on things from huge expansions all the way down to tiny little updates. And you can kind of hold some control back for balancing changes, but these guys are doing it incredibly, incredibly well. And you only have to look at old school's results to see that this formula works. And CCP have implemented into EVE Online the Council of Stellar Management, and that's a kind of scaled back version of what Jagex are doing, and I think this is really powerful for games that you can't necessarily hand the controls over to because of a publisher or some other stakeholders, and they use that council of kind of elected and selected players as stakeholders within a game. So every quarter they fly them out to their studio, they talk to them, they give them real control and insight and input into their decision-making processes. And handing the development reins, I guess, over to the players might be really scary, but it does work. They'll tell you what they want and they'll give you a mandate to work on it. And I've heard so many times throughout my career that there is like so much fear of pressing the update button in case the players don't like an update. But what if you could have got their permission in the first place, got support of 75% of your players, you'd have an unbelievable mandate to go and do whatever update you wanted. You got a lot more mandate than Boris Johnson will have to deliver Brexit, right? So I think you can satisfy a lot more people, hopefully. And at that point, you'll know that your community is backing you every single step of the way. And so the more you involve them, the more they will back you and the more positive your sentiment will be, which ultimately then drives brand ambassadors. So it's kind of feeding this cycle of the community here. And at the very least, focus your time on what the customer wants. So it's not for everyone handing over and kind of putting your development pipeline to 75% of the users to sign off on. That's maybe not going to work for everyone. The publisher might not allow it, you might not trust your community, whatever the reason is, if you can't hand over control to your customers, just be prepared to listen and learn from them. Bethesda did this with the Hearthfire DLC for Skyrim. They saw the most popular mods on the mod store that not everyone was using, but their most engaged players were. And they saw that the most popular mods at the time were all housing. Everything. All of the charts were housing mods, customization options for your house. That was all anyone was talking about. So they already had knowledge that this was going to sell. So they just worked on it, made a really compelling DLC, and no surprise that it was a huge commercial success. So Bethesda capitalized on what the engaged players were doing, and to be honest, most players playing Skyrim probably won't know that you could, at that time, probably wouldn't have known that you could download mods for PC because they're playing on PS4 or whatever. And so I think if you can start to build that into your roadmap, and if you can start giving your community managers, or at least your community, more authority to start inputting directly into your roadmap and into your development process, you'll start to see a huge return on investment, whether that's sales of a DLC or a more effective limited time event in your live game. It's really as simple as that. If you give them what they want, they will give you your money. They will give you their money. It's really, really simple. And the next stage of this is inform. And this isn't rocket science. This one's about keeping your community up to date on the latest developments, the timelines, the roadmaps, where their projects that they so badly want are within that kind of process. And I guess I hear a lot of pushback from developers and designers on this because, and I do understand it, it's because they don't want other developers to know what they're working on, they don't want players to hold them to deadlines. I think that's a very valid concern, but you could almost certainly do more to keep your players more informed, whether that's videos, development blogs, social posts. Just give them as much information as you can possibly give. And if you can be open with them and share as much as you possibly can, allowing them to see the people inside the studio and behind their game, they'll feel more involved, more informed, and they'll have a richer investment in your product. it's more likely they'll wait for the next update or be hyped for it when it comes out, and so they'll stick around more for the next DLC, the next promotion, the next event, the next update. And the truth is, it's not just games companies who are doing this really fucking successfully. This applies to any company in any industry with a development process. The best of them are doing this to the absolute extreme already and seeing huge gains from it. So Monzo is a challenger bank, and if you don't have the Coral card in your purse, then you're absolutely missing out because they're a brilliant bank. And their policy is to be transparent by default, which I think is a fucking great tagline, isn't it? And their policy is if they can legally tell their customers, they will. Because it's important to be transparent in in the financial institution world, which is traditionally completely opaque. And they're a brand after my own heart. And I'll tell you a funny story in that I actually interviewed to work for them a while back, but I was rejected because I swear too much. So do with that what you will, but fuck them. So they publish their entire development roadmap. They invite their community into their office to give feedback, to share their processes, their knowledge. They have guest speakers in, and they treat their customer as their team to give them ideas, because ultimately these early adopters are the ones that are going to be driving the features forward for the massive consumer market that comes next. They understand that tech adoption curve doesn't just apply to tech and games, it applies to the banking sector as well. They're on the cutting edge, and so if you feel like you can't do this, you bloody well can, because a bank can do it. So there is nothing stopping you within the gaming space. Stranded Deep did it. There's loads and loads of games that do it. And if you imagine what would have happened if No Man's Sky had published their roadmap pre-launch, instead of just kind of hyping it to press, and I know that the guys working on that game have kind of stepped back from that and started to understand what they did wrong and have done a fantastic job since. But if they had published their roadmap in advance and given their audience more insight into what they were doing, you know for a fact that the audience wouldn't have been so shocked and angry when the game had come out. And the next phase of this is care. I want you to care about the people behind the screen. Who are they as humans? Why do they love your game? And that why is so important. Why are they part of your community? Why have they chosen you and your game and your community and you as a developer to trust, to pay money to? What is it about your product that they love so much? According to our research, 80% of all gamers play to escape from reality. That is the number one motivation for playing any type of game, mobile, PC, console. The quotes there, they just stand out to me so much in that people use games as a means of escape. They use games as a means of opening themselves up and living the life they actually want to live. Imagine if you're gay, but you're not out to your parents or your friends. By going into a game, you can be, because no one knows who you are. So you can be completely open and honest about who you are. You can play as an elf or a woman or an orc. It doesn't matter, because in a game you can play as anything you want to be. You are your character and you can live and breathe that. So your players, when they're in your game, whether it's an app, whether it's a PC game, console game, it doesn't matter. When they're in your game, they are at their most open and impressionable. Your players are expressing themselves in their truest sense whilst they're in the worlds that you've created. Be their steward, care about them, and give them the tools they need to build a community for themselves. So Final Fantasy do this incredibly well in that they support a huge LGBT clan within their game. And that they make sure that they've got a space within their fan fest. They make sure that they highlight that clan to press to do interviews with, because they know they're such a positive community. And people join Final Fantasy just to be part of that clan now, and so they're going to start using it in their own marketing. So imagine how powerful that is that you let your community not just do the word of mouth marketing, but become the product. That's when it kind of goes beyond just games. You're actually selling membership into a community, and that, I think, is just unbelievably powerful, and that's the untapped potential within the gaming space. To do that, to create these communities and to be the steward, you have to immerse your players in and out of the game world. Communicate with them in an authentic way. In your community, communications with your marketing, put it in a format they understand and they already consume on platforms they're already on and already engaging with. support and create content they want to watch, either by using creators they're already paying attention to, the influencers that have that have risen to prominence within your own community, and use the same language and tone as them. I think we've all seen the ads for those like hyper casual games, which is like me versus my mom, or Donald Trump versus Kim Jong-un. And I think those work because they are of the type of content that the audience is already consuming. They're on their phones, they're scrolling through social every day. So they're so used to those like meme formats that UA firms have really figured out that people, when they see a meme, are primed to think it's funny, even if it's fucking rubbish. So even when it's me versus my mum, that doesn't make sense. I'd obviously beat my mum. And it's that sense of, I need to have an emotional reaction to this, because people have been programmed by memes to have an emotional reaction. So these kind of formats are now being exploited on the platforms that they're already being consumed on. And that is how you take your marketing to the next level, is use what your community are already doing and kind of mirroring it back to them. And that's when you'll kind of start to get those lookalikes coming back to you. And this isn't an example of games, but this is a company doing it right. We worked with an insurance company called First Central, and they wanted to talk to the gaming audience in a really authentic way. They trusted us to create compelling content for them, and they basically give us carte blanche to do whatever the fuck we wanted. And they said, we want to raise awareness of Road Safety Week. It's really important to us, and it's also going to raise great awareness of our brand. And off the back of the campaign we did for them, they became the #1 most viewed sponsor in the UK for their industry, beating Barclays, Scottish Widows, RBS, and their budget was fairly modest, whereas Barclays was spending hundreds of thousands of pounds. The reason it was so successful is because they gave us the ability to make something authentic. They cared enough about the audience to make content they wanted to watch, rather than just running pre-roll or mid-roll or display ads on websites they were visiting. And I'm showing you this because you need to be authentic in your own marketing as a games developer and publisher. We know that gamers need social proof. And so I want you to think about how you can build that into your next UA campaign or kind of marketing exercise, whether you're building it into community communications, whatever it is. Think about how you can build in social proof and those formats they're already engaging with. And just for context, we, for First Central, for Road Safety Week, we had them play BeamNG, which is like this ridiculous physics simulation game of car crashes. It's brilliant. If you haven't played it, you should. Or just watch the videos because they're hilarious. And we made them control cars with eye gaze technology. And then we distracted them as you would in a normal car. So they're driving along with their eyes, and they subsequently crash the car every time you put a screaming baby next to them or show them their phone. And finally, engage. It's all about becoming part of your own community. Your developers, your designers, your marketers, and obviously your community managers, everyone in your business has to be immersed in your community. So RuseGape do this really well. Every single member of staff, whether you're a receptionist through to a HR person or recruiter, whether you're a designer, developer, community manager, whether you're the CEO of the company, you've got a Twitter account with your display name on it, and players can get in touch with you and see what you're working on. Now that is fantastic because it gives unparalleled access to a business which in the past has been very, very closed off. And so it's a complete step change, and they've really built that into their culture. Become part of your community's culture and support them, and this then supports the other 3 areas. So we've kind of done this whole process in reverse. Once you engage with the people in your community, you will come to care for that community. You'll want to keep them up to date on how things are progressing because you give a shit about them, and you will learn to trust them to help steer your development process when they are responding well to the fact you're listening. We touched on CCP and JAGX and how they've given power directly to their customer in terms of development, but I also think there's a part to it where we as devs and publishers need to give power to our communities to self-regulate and choose the channels that they want to use. We always push forums and all that, and I think they're long gone. And actually the best subreddits are community run. The best Discord servers are places where devs just guest rather than have created and moderate. They're the places where real, true discussion happens and the community spirit comes alive. Look at Starbucks, who created the Leaf Rakers Society, which is a Facebook group of people who love pumpkin spice lattes. So fucking niche. And they've got tens of thousands of people who are passionate about pumpkin in coffee, which I think is disgusting. But people really, really love this. And so they've now got this community who are self-regulating. Starbucks never posted this, by the way. They just post about how much they love autumn and can't wait for pumpkin spice lattes. They post pictures of where they've spotted it on secret menus and things like that. And so you've got an audience that are hyping themselves up every year for a £5 cup of coffee, which is mental. And Greg's too, and there must be something about high street coffee shops and bakery brands that I'm really into today, but they made a WhatsApp group filled with people who are obsessed with the festive bake. Again, another product I don't like. They found that their biggest advocates from social were talking about the festive bake all the time, even not at Christmas. And they set up a WhatsApp group, filled it with those people, and fed them very small bits of information about where they could get their hands on turkey-filled pastry. Now, that in itself is completely unexciting, but when you've got 50, 60, 100 super fans tweeting, Instagramming, live streaming their journey to get a festive bake, it becomes a bit of a cultural moment, and that got picked up by the Metro and then went absolutely mental on social. So just think about how you can work with your community directly and your biggest advocates and take that to the next level. And finally, because nothing is ever complete without PewDiePie, I would like to tell you a story about how we made Fortnite players more polite. PewDiePie featured a piece of content from his subreddit in one of his videos, Meme Review. He was talking about people who thank the bus driver as being like the alphas of the world. They're so polite, they're lovely, and they ascend to pharaohhood when they die. Within hours, Fortnite players had spotted an opportunity in that you couldn't thank the bus driver in Fortnite. It's a scandal. You were jumping off the battle bus, but you couldn't thank the damn bus driver, so no one was a pharaoh. And they decided to start a petition, which grew massively. And we covered this on GameBite in one of our articles on the website, published it across social, and it was our highest performing article for the quarter and one of our highest performing across the year. A few days later, PewDiePie then picked up our article in one of his own videos and featured it, and the article had another second wind, and the petition got more signatures. But the best thing of all is Epic were listening. They'd seen the video, they'd seen the article, they took action as a result. They implemented this tiny and ultimately completely pointless update of being able to thank the bus driver. And Fortnite players were over the moon, and obviously PewDiePie subscribers were delighted as well. They embraced the meme. They had their ear to the ground and made a tiny little change, probably took them 10 minutes, that caused a huge ripple across the community and beyond. They engaged completely, taking on a meme that wasn't necessarily related to them and really making it their own. And this is an easy win, but a great example of how you can capitalize on meme culture and what your community are already talking about within your own games to further engage your community and show that you care. And that's DICE, everybody. Drive, inform, care, and engage. Go away, think about it, take it, build it into the fabric of your studios. They are the 4 key demands of every single powerful community. And yeah, you absolutely have to implement chat, clans, limited time events, and you absolutely have to do that. But when you go back to work, and if you've already got those features in your game, think about what you're developing, marketing, publishing. Think about how you can harness the power of community with the culture of your organization and the culture of your development team and process. And your community will respond incredibly, incredibly well, believe me. Thank you so much for coming along. Enjoy the rest of your day. I know this was the first talk of many, I'm sure. If you have any questions, we do have some time. Yeah, there is a microphone, so you can ask them now. Otherwise, I'm free for a chat afterwards. Thank you very much. We have a question. One there.
So when you talk about community, when you talk about communities, you say obviously there is a whole lot of positive health things come out of them, but how do you manage the flip side of things where communities can actually be a very negative force? It can reinforce its own toxicity, and even I think there's a risk, especially when you say you're listening to players and acting what people that are engaged with your community are interested in. You can almost make a little bubble where only the people interested in the game and certain changes will stay. and everybody else, new players, newcomers might not be as interested in that and get pushed away.
Totally. I think that's a really valid concern, and one I conveniently neglected to talk about in my presentation because it doesn't fit with my theme. Yeah, you totally are right. There are some very negative elements to having big, powerful communities, and I think the team that work on Old School RuneScape will attest to that. I'm sure the guys at CCP will attest to some negative forces within their own community, and I think we can all share examples of where we've had players shitting on us. But the truth is, it's kind of part and parcel of it, and you know that someone that's really angry about something at least gives a shit about it. So they're passionate, so tap into that. Okay, they don't like it, not everyone will, but I tell you what, it's the same thing that Gillette and Nike have done. Gillette did that advert that was kind of like the social justice side of things, where they were saying, is this the best a man can be? They really pissed off a load of people that currently buy Gillette razors because they said, oh, men are misogynist, yada, yada, yada. And I think that's kind of a reductive view, but let's stick with it for now. And that pissed off a lot of people, and so they will sell less razors this year. But in the long run, Gillette have just tapped into an audience that really care about social justice. And so when those young people come to shave, you know for a fact they're not picking up a Wilkinson sword, they're picking up a Gillette razor. It's the people who burnt their trainers. They don't give a shit about the people that burnt their trainers, Nike, because those people are going to die soon. They give a shit about the people who are going to buy their trainers because they love Copernic and they don't like Donald Trump. They are thinking about lifetime value of customers. And do you know what? If you don't have the luxury of that because your game has a short shelf life, then don't take it to the 75% extreme of Old School RuneScape, but start to tap into it on a kind of smaller level and work with the positive forces within your community. And I think if you're listening to the negativity but explaining why you can't take action as a result, then that's good enough. And most people, once you've smiled at them and have been really rational, they go, oh, that wasn't worth being angry about, and I kind of feel stupid now. And that's how you turn negativity into positivity. I think that's it. So thank you very much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.